All things can be solved by turning it off and back on again, whether that's people or laptops or just going and making coffee.
Oh, that's the sort of go-to solution, though, isn't it?
Definitely. So you are nervous, I know that.
I'm nervous because I'm not convinced I'm actually a very interesting person. I really enjoyed hearing Ben's, and he had so many amazing things to tell. And I was like looking at these questions, thinking, well, obviously I've got to be honest, but I don't want to sound dull and boring. Like, who's going to want to know that about my life?
You know,
so I was trying to be honest, but like really think about it, because some of these questions actually were really quite sort of thought-provoking. And obviously I thought, I've never really thought of that before. How would I answer that?
Yeah. Well, I hope we cover those questions. But what you were saying about being interesting, I've thought about doing this for quite some time and always put it off on the basis that, you know, as a mum in her 40s, what do I really have to say about anything? You know, who's going to want to listen to me? You put stuff out there and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly right.
But I quite like interviews with interesting folk, partly because I've lived lots of places and I've met lots of people, and some of them I'm still in touch with decades in some cases later, that people I know here and now will never have had the chance to meet you, for instance, or Ben.
Yeah, no, we definitely weren't prepared. You know, we had to homeschool Liam, and being autistic and having severe learning difficulties, that was absolutely bonkers, because we were sent through worksheets, and they said, right, you know, teach him this. And I was like, well, I wouldn't have a clue how to teach maths nowadays, let alone to someone with autism and special needs.
Yeah.
So we really sort of winged it all the way through. I mean, he did incredibly well, but it was very, very stressful.
It's different. People have reacted differently to things, haven't they? Some people have found just being cooped up in the house too much. So I think everybody's had quite a different reaction to the next person, haven't they, to lockdown?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, I discovered several places you could do online courses, short online courses where you didn't have to write essays and essays and essays, because I don't have the brain capacity anymore. I gave my memory and brain power to Charlotte umbilically, and her memory is fantastic and mine went out the window. So being able to sit down and, you know, do a university level course now and write essays would be completely beyond my skill set. But tiny little bite-sized things are marvellous.
That's doable.
Yeah. So I've still got a list that I'm trying to wade through. If I manage to do it before I retire, I think I might have done well.
Oh, it's good to have these lists and things that you...
I got all excited and thought, oh, this is interesting, and oh, this is interesting. And before I knew it, I had headaches. I had literally multiple tabs open, not only on the computer, but in my brain. And it was one day when I was hyperventilating around the house going, what's the matter with me? This is silly. And it's like, yeah, but I've got this, and I've got this online class I want to take, and then, and it's like, hang on. Concentrate on one thing at once and do it well. So that's what I learnt in lockdown. One thing at once and do it well. Yeah.
You can only do so much, and be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, and everybody has different abilities. And just because, you know, the lady down the road does things appearingly better than you, doesn't mean that she is.
No, because you don't know what anybody's life is like in their own house with their door shut.
Exactly right. Ours is usually quite chaotic. And most of our neighbours are probably bad at that.
The thing is, though, everybody's is, isn't it? And unless you leave a camera in somebody else's house, you're never going to know that stuff.
I know, I've often thought, actually, I'd like one of those, like, fly on the wall documentaries done about our life, because I'm sure it's way more crazy than we actually see it to be. And I would almost love to see a day in the life of me, just to see actually what I do get up to.
And you thought you would be boring.
I'm not sure I'd want it on national TV though, just
for you.
I'm sure the main thing that will come out is I sort of nibble on too many biscuits or something throughout the day.
I think I must get up in the night and eat things that don't actually exist really, because I can't get a handle on my weight at the moment. And the only thing I can put it down to is that somebody comes in my house in the middle of the night and injects me full of butter. Because I can't work out how else it can possibly be that I keep gaining, despite the fact that I'm tracking and I'm doing all these, exercises and gyms and all the rest of it. It's like, why doesn't it just fall off because I wish it?
I think it's a menopausal thing, because I've also gone up quite a few dress sizes, and I found that really, really difficult to cope with, because I didn't like the way I looked, the way I felt. And it took me quite a while to actually accept, okay, this is just Mother Nature, this is just part of life, this is the new me. I mean, on the plus side, I had to go out and buy some more clothes, so that was kind of nice. But if you ask my husband, I'm the world's worst shopper. I'm great for shopping for anybody else, but when it comes to buying things for myself, as a mum and a wife, I'm no good at it at all. But I started swimming. That's my latest thing. I went swimming with Katie. She was home for the summer, which was absolutely amazing. So I was able to look after her and her growing bump. And she was able to sort of support me with swimming. So 3 times a week we were going swimming together, which was absolutely fantastic. We had a right hoot. But she's obviously gone back to teach now, so I'm like swimming alone. And it's quite daunting not having my sidekick with me. But I'm sticking at it. That, and I've cut out bread, because I think that was quite possibly my bad sin, was lots of bread.
Right, yeah.
Whether it's working or not, I don't know. I haven't suddenly gone down a dress size.
These things take time, though, I think. The problem I've got with clothes is that my top half is a substantially smaller dress size than my bottom half.
Okay.
So unless you buy tops and bottoms, if you're trying to buy something that's an all-in-one, it is an absolute pest. You have to be able to take, and I'm only short, so you have to be able to take the legs up of anything, really. But the top half is always billowy, and the bottom half is always, far too tight, and really, frankly, should have gone up a size. So it's tricky. Charlotte bought a coat last winter that's almost crop, but right at the natural waist.
Yeah.
And I don't know what possessed me, but I put it on one day thinking, well, I'll just see if I can. And it fitted me really well in a size I was quite happy to admit to, which was quite nice. But because it stopped here, which is where I'm smallest, it fit, I could do it up. And she looked at me and went, oh, well, you'll have to get one. So this year I bought one in this sort of colour, because this is the colour that suits me really well. And I put it on in the shop in a slightly, what I thought might have been aspirational size. But the good news about oversize as a fashion statement is that it means for those of us who don't want to admit the size that we are, can get away with buying smaller sizes, because then they fit us nicely rather than being oversized.
It's quite trendy to buy these oversized jumpers that look like they're about 10 sizes too big.
Which would make us look ridiculously big.
Yes,
if we genuinely wore it oversized. So, I'm quite happy with my new little coat. It's a colour I like. It fits me really nicely. I went out for the first time in it today because it's chucking it down with rain. And I put it on and went, hey, look at me. I'm all matching. Earrings, coat, T-shirt, all the same colour. I look very put together today.
Well, I was told some really good advice from my daughter-in-law, and she said never ever look at a size label in clothes, because every shop is different, especially with women's clothes. Every shop is different. You can be a size 14 in one shop and a size 20 in another, which can be really, really disheartening, especially as a woman. But never look at the size. Just pick an item up that you think you like, and you can usually tell by looking at it, can't you, that that's too small or that's too big, whatever. Yeah. And just go with it. She said, don't ever look at the size. And that was one of the best bits of advice that I was given from, a weight fluctuating point of view. Yeah. Men just go in and they're like a small, medium or large, bish, bash, bosh, and they're done.
Neck size. How do they measure their entire body just by their neck or collar size? It's stupid, isn't it? What if they're really fat but they've got a tiny neck?
That would actually be quite amusing, actually. I'd like to see that.
And apparently these things are, whatever the word is, there you go, that's the brain cell gone, relative, that if you are big here, you're also big here. And it's like, okay. So if you lose weight all over, you'll also lose it in your neck. But to me, it feels like we'll measure your ears and that'll tell us your shoe size.
Yeah.
And the irritating thing I find about weight loss is that, at least for me, I'll gain it in particular lower half places, but lose it from the top half place. That, frankly, I could do with a bit more there and less in the other places. In fact, transplant might be quite nice. But that's always the place I lose it first, which seems really mean.
I know. But I think we're never happy with our body or our hair, are we? If you've got straight hair, you want curly hair. If you've got curly hair, you want straight hair.
It's just part of being a woman, I think, isn't it?
I think it is. And I think also it's one of those things that it takes you a long time. I think for myself, I've only now really got to that stage where I can go, look, this is me. This is the size and shape I am. Yeah. Whereas obviously, as my younger self, and we didn't have social media back then like, our daughters and our children do now.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And I think there's so much peer pressure to look a certain way and look a certain shape. And, we grew up with sort of Barbies and Cindy's. And I think a lot of us grew up thinking, like, that is how I have to look as a woman.
Mm.
Actually, if you measure a Barbie or a Cindy doll, she's completely out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean, and she'd fall over because her feet aren't big enough.
Well, this is it, exactly right. And those ridiculous shoes she used to wear. But you take someone like Marilyn Monroe, who is still... a worldwide superstar, and her body's completely out of proportion. However, she's one of the most beautiful women to see. And
probably will always be seen that way.
Yeah, exactly right.
Quite curvy, her legs met in the middle, so none of this thigh gap business. I don't know what one of those is because I really never had one. And my legs rub. I can't go completely bare-legged. Even in the swimming pool, I get sore. But so in the summer, I've discovered shorts. My mum never had chub rub, as it gets commonly referred to.
Refer to it as chub rub, yeah.
So she never prepared me for it. I just had to moan that my legs were sore and have nobody take any notice of me. Yeah. I think because it didn't impact her, so she didn't know how to train me. Whereas I've made sure Charlotte is aware of it. She had one summer where she was a bit rubby and then has managed to grow out of it while I'm still waiting. Right, shall we get to our topics, do you think?
Okay, I feel a little bit more relaxed now.
I thought you might, once we got going. Yeah, so pretend you haven't watched Ben's interview because Ben was interviewed for an entirely different purpose to you. I'm interested in you, your life story, if you remember it, how we met, and things like that. So for the purposes of my viewers, Mandee and I went to school together, but not from the very beginning of secondary school. Mandee came in halfway through. But she has a beautiful photo, which I will insert here, of the two of us wearing our darling hats. And the interview I've also recorded today that will go out the month previous to this one, the first time David met me, I was wearing this hat. So I think it's really funny that
that's amazing.
You've both ended up being interviewed on the same day, although you'll be a month apart in publication. But apparently that's how he remembers me, leaning up against a wall, in a queue of people, waiting to go into a lecture, looking very forlorn and slightly worried about what I was doing whilst wearing my hat.
But did the hat give you the confidence it did back in the day when we were sort of 14, 15?
Well, I must have thought so, because it went everywhere with me. And I understand, if I remember correctly, you spent a whole month's of clothing allowance on it.
Yes, my parents are trying to sort of introduce us to sort of budgeting and being, savvy with money. So every month they gave us a clothing allowance. I forget how much it was. I think it was something like £25 a month, which back then was, a bit of amount. And we didn't have to buy shoes, winter coats or school uniform, but it was just for all the other bits. And I don't think we had met much previously to this. And you had invited me to go to the church youth group with you, which I was delighted with. And I thought, well, I have to look cool. I have to look with it because I'm going to meet new people and I want to make new friends. And it was that was the week that I got my month's clothing allowance. So rather than being sensible and looking at what I actually needed, I blew the whole month's allowance on this amazing hat. And I felt the bee's knees in this hat and was delighted when I went to your house for tea after school prior to going to youth club that we both had hats.
See, we were just meant to be friends, I think.
We were. And I think that's probably one of my favourite pictures of us together is us with our hats.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds about right. So, you have one sibling.
I do, yeah. My sister Sam, she's 2 years and 2 months older than me.
The thing I remember about Sam is the colour of her mini.
Oh, yes, her Mr. Bean green mini.
Yes, Mushy P.
That's it, well remembered.
My brother now owns a mini for the second time in his life, and minis obviously are not remotely the same size now as Sam's mini was.
Yes.
And I was telling my nieces when they came to stay last month that my friend from school had this big sister, and we thought it was marvellous because a big sister could drive, and she had this is now considered horrible green car that yes, but Mushy P I think quite describes the colour of it.
Yeah, it was, and it was just at Mr. Bean. And here's something you might not know: I almost gave birth to Tom in the back seat of that mini.
Yeah. Because
Sam was the one that drove me to hospital while I was in labour. and somehow, I mean, she was doing her midwifery training as part of her nursing course at the time. So for some reason, she thought sitting in the back would be better. So I had more leg room should I give birth in the car. But fortunately,
at least you had qualified personnel with you.
Well, this is it, yeah.
And how many children have you got?
I have 4 birth children and 2 stepsons. So never thought I would have quite as big a family, but I feel very, very blessed to have such a large family, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I can't imagine having a small family. I think I'd be like, well, what do you do all day? You know, because
I kind of feel like that. I always thought, having watched, the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie and stuff as a child, hence the degree I do, that I would be some sort of Ma Walton with like a brood. And it took us a long time to get to Charlotte in the first place. And whilst there has been a very flicker of another one, it didn't hang about long enough to turn into one. That's it. That's the only sniffs of pregnancies I've ever had, and nothing since. And obviously at 46, it would be somewhat laughable now to go back to changing nappies. But I'd always assumed I would be the mother of lots. But I think it's a very different dynamic in a family of 3 than there is in a family of 4 or more or whatever. But do provide the fantastic quote you told me once about how to worry and keep a bigger family.
Okay, so my quote that you want me to say is it's a bit like cooking a roast dinner. And if you know there's another person suddenly coming or expecting, you just peel a few extra spuds. And that is basically how you are a mum of 4.
And I can't remember how you ever told me that in the first place. I must be worried about something or having people to visit or something. But I always thought that was the most fantastic thing told to me about bigger families. It's like, I'll just shove some more potatoes in.
But it's true. It really is true. If you're bathing one child in a bath, chuck them all in. Have like a production line and you're all washing their hair and it goes over all their heads, bish, bash, bosh, and it's done. But I think it's a matter of having to.
Yeah.
If you were suddenly in charge of 3 teenagers instead of just 1, at first you'd be like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? It's going to be so hard work. But you just do it. And I think being organised and having like a production line is almost the best way to do it. Making packed lunches. If you're making one sandwich, you've already got your bread, your butter, your cheese, your ham, etc. out. So just rather than have one bit of bread, have 4 bits and just butter them all and then put the ham on them all and the cheese on them all.
So
anyway.
In between all of this child raising, what do you like to do in your free time?
In my free time, I didn't really have that much free time when my children were younger, and I think any free time was taken up with shopping, housework, getting the next meal ready. There were obviously a lot of school runs once my youngest started going to school, because half of them were full-time, half of them were part-time. There was after-school clubs, so there was a lot of toing and froing. So there wasn't much free time then. But certainly now I've found a new love of swimming. And I think going back to previously, that was all to do with, my body shape changing. My daughter is now expecting her first baby, which is very exciting. And so when she was home for summer, we did a lot of swimming together, and I'm really enjoying that, sort of physically and mentally. So I do like swimming, and living on Cornwall, obviously the beach. I could go to the beach every single day. It's just so peaceful and so relaxing, whether it's winter and you've got your welly boots and your woolly hat on, or whether you're just barefoot on the sand in the summer. So quite a simple thing, really, but just being around what we've got.
And simple things are easy to achieve.
They are
have
very
complicated ambitions, like, I don't know, I want to eat caviar every day or something. That might be more difficult to achieve.
I mean, of all the things to eat every day, I don't think caviar would.
It wouldn't do it for me.
Chocolate, maybe.
Maybe.
But that wouldn't help our fluctuating sizes, I'm sure.
How old were you when you had your first child?
Okay, so I was at college, and I was 16 when I found out I was pregnant with Tom, and I had him at 17. Obviously, at that age, I thought I was invincible. I thought I was an adult. I thought I knew everything. I had all my stuff together. How wrong I was. I remember when I moved out of home, because I was still living with mum and dad at the time. Tom was about 1. And I moved out and had my first house, and I thought it was really exciting. I could stay up late, I could eat whatever I want. It was going to be just awesome. It was very far different to that. And I remember for about the first month, I actually was on mum and dad's doorstep at 8 o'clock every morning for my breakfast. Because obviously I could make breakfast myself, but it was just very weird being there on my own with nobody that really talked, other than someone that babbled at me and pulled at my apron strings,
Yeah.
So it was actually a really big shock to me of living on my own. The budgeting and making sure that everything was in place for the next day. It was way harder than I ever thought it was going to be. But I did it because, that was that is what was needed of me.
Yeah.
But I suddenly quickly learned that I wasn't this invincible teenager that was a very mature adult and knew everything. And actually, I still needed support of my family around me.
How did it feel as you approached Tom being the same age you were when you fell pregnant with him?
Very surreal. With all of my children, I've looked at them when they were sort of 16, 17. And before me, I saw a young child. Yes, they were a teenager, and they were almost at 18. But I think even at 18, your children are still children. They're not. None of us are sort of proper adults just because we're 18, are we?
No.
But when they were sort of 16, 17, I remember looking at them thinking, "Oh my gosh, I had you at this age." And with all the other children, like when sort of, Katie was 16, 17, I thought, oh my gosh, I had 2 children by the time, it was crazy. Looking back at photos of me when I was pregnant, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm like a little girl there. I'm nowhere near an adult, I'm a very, very young girl. So looking at my own children that age, although they are amazing children, and for most of it, they're very, very mature and they've really got life together, I look at them and I think, gosh, I can't imagine you being able to cope with being a parent right now. You know, looking at your lifestyle and the things you like doing and what you'd have to give up. I can't envisage you with a child.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Because actually, you are already a grandma.
I am.
And
I'm a grandma.
My child is 13.
I know. I do look at other people of our sort of age, and I find that they've just become grandparents. And my initial thought is like, gosh, that's quite late. And I'm like, no. Actually, it's not. It's quite a good age.
It's quite ordinary. Yeah. Do you find yourself at an advantage being a younger grandma or a disadvantage?
I think there are pros and cons, aren't there? I mean, obviously, having Tom young and obviously then having grandchildren young, I maybe haven't lived my life. I haven't done the travelling and, you know, exploring different things. But I'm starting to do that now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice that I'm at a stage now that my life has started slowing down a little bit. And actually, I'm still young enough and well enough to maybe do the travelling that the likes of you and other friends did when I was having Tom.
Yeah.
As for being a nana now, I think anyone that knew me as a nana, especially my grandchildren, will probably say I am completely bonkers. I don't care what other people think. I don't care what other people see. I could be in Tesco's and I'm quite happy to just sing a song. It doesn't bother me at all. Me and my grandson Bodhi, who's nearly 4, we have a goodbye dance.
Right.
A lockdown baby, and so like many lockdown babies, it took him a little bit longer to get used to people.
Yeah.
I saw him up until he was 5 months old, and when he was 5 months old, then it went straight into lockdown. And unlike lots of people, we actually followed all of the rules. And so we didn't make up a bubble just so we could see our grandchildren, even though a lot of people did. And that's fine, there's no judgment there, but we didn't. So the only way I could see him was driving to his house, which is about 20 minutes from here, and playing through the lounge windows. He'd be one side, I'd be the other, and they would open the window just enough so we could like talk to each other, and we would sing, and we would put on puppet shows and a whole different host of bonkers things. But that was the only way we could interact and not lose that bond that we already had with him. And subsequently, because of that, when we were then allowed to see each other again properly, he was a little bit reserved, and rightfully so. So rather than, and I also think parenting's different now. When we were kids, we'd say, oh, go and give grandma a kiss goodbye. And not like that now. Parenting is so different. It's very much about, you know, children having the right to their own personal space, which I think is so amazing. So I never forced myself on for a kiss or a cuddle, even though I could cuddle them all day long. I always say, when it's time to go, I say, you know, Nana has to go now. And I say, would you like a hug? Would you like a kiss? Or would you like a wave? So there are his 3 choices of how he would like to say goodbye. And then I have to stay quiet because there is actually a 4th way to say goodbye. And I have to wait, and he goes, what about a dance? So we have this amazing goodbye dance, which obviously I'm not going to demonstrate for you.
I was going to say, I would imagine you're not going to demonstrate.
No, but I'll happily send you the video of it so you can put it in your mind.
I will insert it here.
It's really amazing. And I literally just made up this silly little tune that I sort of hummed, and we danced. And it's very much sort of your bum, you know, and you're giving all of this. And we've even done it in a car park. You know, we've met them for lunch and on a Friday, and they've gone back home, and we've gone back to do what we're doing. And I say, would you like a hug, a kiss, or anything? And he goes, what about a dance? So we've been in the middle of Starbucks car park at Chippy Cross, or when it was Chippy Cross, and I'm doing this bootylicious dance in the car park, and I really, really don't care because that's what my grandson's asked for. So that's what my grandson's going to have.
I definitely need a video of this.
I've got it in slow-mo as well, and that's even funnier.
Definitely. We'll have the slow-mo version and we'll insert it here. How do you think being a teen mum has influenced you now? And do you have any pearls of wisdom for anybody else who's just suddenly found themselves in the same boat?
You know, I've got all these notes here.
You haven't looked at them yet, have you?
I haven't looked at them yet. I can't remember what I said, but that one really got me thinking.
Oh, good. I'm glad we met one of those target questions then. Mandee's had the questions for several weeks and has obviously taken the time to look very deeply into herself to get the answers. So the slightly more frivolous questions, we'll see what answers she gives for those as well.
I found it really interesting, and I was really grateful for the opportunity to really sort of dive into myself to find these answers.
Good. I'm glad of that, because you were nervous too. And I'm glad you've got over that, so that's good.
I think really the biggest thing was I never believed I could, and I never believed I would be good enough.
Right.
You know, back when I was 16, as I'm sure you can imagine, when family and friends found out I was pregnant, I wasn't married, I wasn't in a safe, secure financial place in my life, there were lots of negative things said, some from family members, some from church members. And it's always easier to hold on to the bad things than the good things, isn't it? I remember when I heard all these bad things, it sparked off a fire in me thinking, okay, I'm going to show you that not only am I going to be a good mum, I'm going to be the best mum I can be. I'm going to be the best version of myself. And I won't get it right all the time, and I don't get it right now, even as a nana, but I'm going to do the very best I can. So I think I've learned really that no matter how hard life can get and whatever life throws at you, just believe in yourself, because you are so much stronger than we all have faith that we are. And there is that power inside you. There is that strength inside you. You've just got to trust yourself and believe in yourself that you can get through this. And you won't only just be good enough, you will be, amazing.
Smashing. If we stopped it now, then that would be enough, and you've done a fantastic job, so well done.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Would you like a couple of frivolous questions to balance off your mental state?
Go on, then.
Here is pots and pots of money. Where would you go?
Where would I go? Well, this might sound really, really boring, but I was born in Scotland, and I don't remember Scotland at all, because I was about 3 when we left. My dad was in the Royal Navy, and that's where he was posted at the time. Right. I've always said it feels really weird sort of to my soul that I've lived most of my life in Cornwall, and I know quite a lot about Cornwall, but actually I come from somewhere else, and I don't know a thing about it. So my first stop would actually be a road trip to Scotland.
And round.
Presumably. And round, yeah. Which actually we're doing next year, so that's going to be really, really cool.
Oh, you don't need my money then.
Sorry?
You don't need my money.
No, it'll be fine. But after I've done that, I would love to go to Australia.
What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were little?
I always wanted to work with children. I didn't quite know in what capacity, but I always wanted to work with children. I've always had a love for children. My mum always said that whenever we're out and about, if ever she lost me, whether it was, at church, a car boot sale, at churro shopping, whatever, she'd look for the nearest pram, and there I'd be. Aww. And so I wanted to work with children. After having 4 children of my own, however, the thought of them looking after other people's children didn't quite appeal to me. But as a young child, I always wanted to work with children. So I guess, 7 children, 7 grandchildren, another one on the way. I'm doing quite well in that field.
Yes, it does sound like it.
Somebody somewhere obviously knew that that's what I was meant to be doing with my life. I don't really think there is a right or a wrong time in your life to have a child or to start a family. Saying that, obviously 16 wasn't at all ideal. And, it's more advisable to have money in the bank and have a place to live, etc., etc. But I think we all have an idea in our head when we're young of where we want our life to go. But very often it doesn't happen that way. And I'm a bit of a cynic. I think things happen for a reason. And there's something or someone that steers you, down the road you're supposed to go down. I'm not an intellectual person at all, so there was no way I was going to go to university. That was definitely not on the cards for me.
I'm not sure I'd recommend it anyway to anybody, because I have a degree that in a completely fairly useless subject. I used to only be decent at pub quiz questions, and even that now I get wrong. So, other than teaching people the same subject in a sort of lecturer or professor kind of way, which just makes more of us with the same equally as useless qualification. Or, and I was saying this to somebody else the other day, have you watched Olympus Has Fallen?
No, I
haven't. It's a apocalyptic, everybody's dead kind of situation set in the White House, which is partly why the White House riots was a little bit scary. If you'd seen that, you would have remembered you'd seen it as a film. There is a woman in a very nice suit, very slim, clipboard, all the rest of it, marching behind the president. She is his chief of staff or undersecretary or something like that. And I remember saying when we watched it, Nick, that's the job I want. I want to be the person behind the president. Might depend on who the president is.
Yes, I agree with that.
And seeing as that president that I particularly would like to work for is not coming back, then that's the end of it. But she was the first one to die.
No, that doesn't sound good at all.
What job would you have been terrible at?
Oh, a maths teacher.
That was quick.
Definitely. I didn't have to think of that. I'm useless at maths. My brain just isn't programmed for numbers and figures at all.
Mine either.
I think when I was being created, that part of me was just left out. I just don't get numbers at all.
Charlotte has already surpassed at the beginning of year 9. In fact, she probably did it in year 7. The skill set I possess for maths. I'm much more booky and peoply. There's no way I'm numeric at all. Fortunately, Nick has an A-level in maths. So at one stage, we knew very early on that she was going to be a mixed bag. She is very booky and English litty, but she's also very mathematical. So it's right, I'll take this, you have this.
Yes.
Because there'll come a day where she will know things that I don't know. And she laughs at me now and says, but you've got a GCSE in maths. I'm like, so I do, but I don't suppose I'd pass the exam if I took it now.
No, exactly right. But I think that's true of any sort of marriage or relationship. You both bring very different things to the table. When I was married the first time round to my children's dad, as you know, he is a maths teacher, so any maths homework was shifted his way, and anything else was shifted my way. And so going back to, you're talking about lockdown, when Liam had his work sent in from his education faculty in lockdown, I was like, I haven't a clue. I'm not even going there. So to be honest, I just emailed them back and said, look, this isn't going to happen, okay? This isn't going to happen. And we did lots of other things instead.
And actually, I think that's okay. They'll catch up, or if they don't catch up on that particular thing, will it greatly impact them greatly? Probably not.
Exactly.
Do they still like you? Did they want to, did anybody get stabbed as a part of lockdown in your house? No? Well, you did a good job then. You've provided me a nice segue. I'm going to take it, but if you don't want to follow along this segue line of conversation, that's fine.
Okay.
You've mentioned that you've been married before.
Yep.
Which I didn't. It's not like I didn't know that, but I know it's a very, very difficult subject to talk about. So I'm going to skip past the first marriage.
Okay.
And we'll go straight on to your current marriage and the delightful fellow who I have now met and approved of, I'd just like to say. Big tick for him.
Oh, I'm glad you approved of him. He's not bad, really, is
because, at the end of the day, my opinion is obviously not really the one that counts to you, is it, at this stage in life? But anyway, how do you think, what have you brought to a second marriage that seems to now be working for you that you didn't have or didn't know, or is there some nugget that you've learnt along the way?
There is. I think the biggest thing is prior to meeting Graham, my current husband, I had a big awakening, and that was very much that I am enough.
Yeah.
I am good enough. Yeah, I'm bonkers. Yeah, I'm a chatterbox. I have lots and lots of flaws. I'm far from perfect, but this is who I am. And I had it in my head and in my heart that if I was to meet someone again, I was going to go, hey, look, this is me. You know, if you like me, that's great. If you don't, that's great too.
Yeah.
You know, but I was very true to myself. I didn't want to do what I'd done in the past, and that was pretend I was someone different because I didn't think people would like the real me.
Right.
So I pretended to be the person that I thought people wanted me to be, and that's a really big mistake, but a terrible way for anybody to feel. You will be enough, and you will be perfect for the right person.
Are you willing to talk about the alopecia?
Yeah, no problem.
How long ago were you diagnosed?
Oh, goodness me. About 7.5 years ago.
And your hair is now your own, yes?
It is, yes. This is my hair. It's not a wig. I mean, I'm not going to pull it, but you'll have to trust me.
Did it come out of somewhere, or was it just a random thing?
It was just a random thing. It was just, it was before me and Graham were married. We weren't really, I don't think we were really living together, but, you know, we spent half the time at my house, half the time at his house. And I was at his house one morning, I just had a shower, and he was at work, everyone else was at school and college, etc. And I was just sort of brushing my hair after I come out of the shower. And as I brushed it, I just felt a massive lump. Now, I think as girls, we all brush our hair and bits go flying and it clogs up the hoover, etc. But this was like a handful. And I was like, what the heck is this? And so I brushed it a bit more and sort of more came out. I had this big patch about yay big at the back of my head.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was really frightened. And so I remember sitting on the top of the stairs at Graham's house and just phoned him and sent him a picture of what was in my hand. And I said, I don't know what's happening. Graham came back from work immediately. He was about 40 minutes away from home, and he came back immediately. I don't know how fast he travelled, but he was there very quicker than 40 minutes. He gave me a massive hug. He said, everything's going to be okay. Whatever's happening, we'll get through this. Now, the awful thing from Graham's point of view is Graham sadly lost his first wife to a very rare form of stomach cancer about 2 years before he met me. And so he had already gone through the hair loss thing. So obviously for him, it's off a load of triggers. At the time, we didn't know what was happening. He was absolute rock. There were times that he would pick up hair around the house where it had fallen out, and he would put it in the bin and hide it so that I didn't notice. He always wakes up really early in the morning, so he would like clean my pillow off so I didn't see that more had fallen out overnight.
Oh, what a lovely... See, I knew I liked him.
Yeah, he really, I'm not just saying this because he's my husband, but he really is one of a kind, and I can't even begin to imagine what he went through personally, going through hair loss a second time.
Yeah.
With someone that he loves. I think that just shows an incredible strength in him to be able to do that. But yeah, he was absolutely amazing, and I don't think I would have got through it without him. It was really, really hard.
Did they give you a reason medically?
Not so much medically, but emotionally. They think that, obviously from going through the divorce, going through not having my children with me every minute of every day, because obviously there was a split between us both, and lots of other things I had to go through leading up to that point emotionally. They think my body just sort of went, whoa, that is enough. But in a weird sort of spiritual way, if you like, I felt a bit like a butterfly in a cocoon. You know, there were lots of sort of ugly things that had happened in my life. And that was like the caterpillar part of it. And then when I met Graham, my life was turning around. And I felt very enclosed with Graham, very safe with Graham. Like the caterpillar in a cocoon. He's in a very safe place. And beautiful things are happening to him. And then when my hair fell out, it was almost a little bit like being reborn again. Thinking, okay, my previous things happening in my life have been, they haven't all been bad, don't get me wrong. You know, there were some really amazing parts of my life prior to meeting Graham. and my marriage wasn't all bad, far from it. But once I met Graham, I just felt something happened to me, and I just felt like my life was sort of starting again from that point. And it was almost like I had to be stripped naked and bare, including my hair, to be able to sort of be reborn again and have a second crack at love, a second crack at life, and to learn from mistakes I'd made in the past and have a better throw at it.
Thank you. Lovely way of putting it. And your hair is now growing back and is behaving as usual.
It is. There's a few greys, but I'm staying back from the camera and I've got the lighting to show.
It's all right. We're all a bit sparkly these days.
Well, that's it.
Okay, in a reborn butterfly thing, if you now wrote a memoir, what would it be called?
Well, I have to leave one word out because it's something my husband says to me about 10 times a day, and it's a bit of a cuss word, so I'll leave that one out. I'll just put a beep there. But I think I would call it Life is a Beep Musical.
Okay.
Purely because I sing all the time. And sometimes, like, Graham or the kids will, like, say a sentence, and there might be, like, a snippet of a title of a song in there, and then I'll just, like, burst into song.
Charlotte is exactly the same. As a musical theatre kid, you mention anything. I sometimes use the word poor unfortunate soul, and I do it deliberately because I know what's coming next. The Ursula song from Little Mermaid comes pouring out.
Yeah.
If I was making pizza for you, what would you have on it?
Oh, vegetables. Loads and loads of vegetables.
You are now vegan, aren't you?
I'm vegan now, yeah. So make sure it's vegan cheese. But, yeah, just cram it full of vegetables.
Was the veganism deliberate, or did you just fall down a hole, or what?
No. When I say accidental, my eldest son and his wife, they went vegetarian. And the reasons for going vegetarian, excuse me, were very much, they didn't feel that an animal had to be killed in order for them not to be hungry.
Right.
And I spent a while thinking about it. Not long, because it actually didn't take me long. And I thought, actually, that is so true. There are so many other ways that I can be nourished without having to eat the flesh of an animal. So I went veggie with them, and I did it on Christmas Day. I thought, if I can go without my pigs in blankets, I can do it. So that year on Christmas Day, I went all out, and I did it.
So, vegetables all over your pizza. Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Imagine you are standing in an ice cream shop with, 86 different flavours or whatever. What are you buying?
Anything chocolatey.
My last person said anything covered in coffee, so that's all right.
Oh, no, definitely not coffee, and nothing minty. Whoever invented mint choc chip, that's just the weirdest combination, and it's so...
No, I'm a mint choc chip fan.
Yeah, Graham, he usually has ice cream, because then he knows I'm not going to want to nick any. But, I mean, now that I'm vegan, I wouldn't nick his ice cream anyway, so
no.
He's good with that.
Okay, and I think probably our final question will be... maybe two. What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
Okay, it doesn't actually sound very weird now, but at the time it was weird. We were in France on holiday, and you're all going to think it's frog's legs or snails. It wasn't. To have steak when we were children was a real treat, because money was tight.
Yeah.
And so steak was a real treat. So we went out to France with some family friends, and Dad said, on this occasion, me and my sister could both have steak. So we were like, wow, how wonderful. So we had steak. And it wasn't until years later we found out that actually what we had eaten was horse steak. Now, we didn't know at the time, so we were like, oh, this is lovely steak, and we ate it. But I was mortified at the time to then find out we had horse. And for some reason, having horse versus cow was wrong.
Yeah.
Obviously, my opinion to that now is completely different. But yes, it's not really that exciting, I'm afraid. But that was the weirdest thing I've ever eaten.
My mum went on an exchange when she was in secondary school to France, and they gave her horse, and she's always talked about it in the same way. But I don't know why we think of horses as, cute and cuddly, and cows as something we can eat. But yeah, when she realised what she'd eaten, she was all like, ooh, about it?
I think because when we were brought up, a horse for English people isn't a traditional meat to eat.
Yeah.
Whereas, cows and pigs and lambs are. And so for us, it's something a little bit different, isn't it?
Mm. I'm going to grant you a surprise day off. How would you fill your day?
How would I fill my day?
What would you do with it? And housework's not allowed as an answer.
Oh, jolly good. I try to avoid that at all costs. My surprise day off, it would have to be the beach. It would have to be the beach somewhere, with my husband, of course.
Of course.
And just being there, just being at the beach, listening to the sound of the waves, smelling the sea salt, walking on the sand. I can't think of anything better to do on a day off. That would always be my go-to place if I was asked what I wanted to do.
Lovely. I think that sounds like a nice place to leave it. Well done. You've managed a whole interview without going to pieces or saying, that's it, I need to go away now.
And I didn't need half of the questions either.
Well, is there something you want my viewers to know that you think I ought to have asked you that you want to share? Mandee, what do you think would be something my subscribers would benefit from having met you?
I think as an individual, having the ability to be open and be true to yourself, and know that you are enough. Don't ever doubt that you're not good enough, you're not funny enough, you're not likeable, because to the people that matter in your life, you will be more than enough, and there is nobody better to be you than you. So don't ever try and be anybody else just to fit in with the crowd.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you. I'm so hot.
You're allowed to go and treat yourself to several biscuits and a cup of tea.
No, I'm going to have an ice cream down at the beach, actually.